So, welcome to the Ashes to Diamond podcast, and we're all about creating beautiful memories. And today I'm super excited to have on the show Janine Austin. So, Janine is a licensed roving funeral director and embalmer, and she's been caring for families for over 14 years. So, welcome, Janine.
Hello, how are you all?
Great. It's so good to have you.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Cara, for
joining.
having. No, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, you're a roving funeral director and embalmer. So that's quite an interesting area, actually. So could you share with us a little bit about your journey and what led you to become basically a roving licensed funeral director and embalmer?
Well, I started in the industry 14 years ago. So I was very fortunate to start in a family-owned company within Taranaki and then have moved on to another place since then within Taranaki as well. But things change in your life and you look at things and revalue things. And my husband got sick, so it was sort of a case of full-time might not be quite so important going forward. So spend time with him and things like that. But then I missed being in the industry as well. So I didn't want to actually leave it completely. So being a part-time funeral director and embalmer doesn't work within the company. So I became a locum. So I have a few main funeral homes that I look after, well, help through their days of staff being on leave or staff down due to sickness. Or even if I've got family and friends that want me to care for them, I've got a lovely little boutique funeral home in New Plymouth that will allow me to care for them through them as well. So I'm very fortunate that Scott and Kirsty at the Simple Cremations and Burials allow me to do that. So I help them out when they are busy and they allow me to care people through them. I also help out a funeral home in South Taranaki and a couple up north as well. So I get to travel around and meet many different people, and every place is different. So you just have to adapt to what they like and how they like things to be done as well, but still share knowledge and gain more knowledge. So it's actually really nice.
That's brilliant, actually, because I personally support people like yourself that are happy and are available to theoretically drop tools and just come in, because let's face it, if someone's sick, they're sick, and they need people like you to be able to just come in at the drop of a hat, which is, if you're able to, which is great.
So it does have its challenges, like sorry, Karen.
No, carry on.
It's like every place is so different as well. So there's not one set of rules for one funeral home. So you just have to be adaptable and flexible and change how you do things sometimes and to meet the needs of their families.
Oh, absolutely. That comes with life, I think, doesn't it? Life experience.
Yeah, it does.
So hey, many people obviously do not fully understand the roles of a funeral director and embalmer. So could you break that down and obviously talk about the key responsibilities for our listeners?
For if I start with embalming, because that's normally the first journey through that process, is that we are trusted with someone's most precious thing. So whether you're a baby to your great grandmother of 105, sometimes we are someone that you've never met before. So you have a phone call or they walk in your door. So you've got 30 seconds for them to trust you in a roundabout way. And you have to build that trust because you're looking after someone very precious for them. So as an embalmer, our role is to make sure that person is safe for family to be around. And that depends on what they've died from, their circumstances, how they've passed away, whether it's sudden accident. Sometimes there are horrendous circumstances to someone's death as well. So there's a whole array of things that we need to be mindful. It's not just walk in, do this, do that. You have to read your families and read the person that has passed away as well. You never want to say that you can't do something for a family, and you never want to promise something that you can't deliver for that family either. So you just got to be very gentle as when you're doing their transfers and the embalms as well, because you're looking after that person for them, for the family to have back at home, whether it's for a tangihanga funeral, whether they're travelling away, whatever they're going to look for. So sometimes we need time with that person as well. And sometimes you've got to have a courageous conversation of, they may need to stay with us overnight, but you need to look after them 150% for you to have them at home. Because things can go wrong. If someone's died from a lot of illnesses, we have to treat all those illnesses when they've passed away. So it's not just embalm them and you take them home. We've got to treat everything that's within them as well to make sure they're safe, that they have their time with you at home without things going. And things can go wrong if we rush it. So we try and endeavour to make sure that we're very, very gentle with them and make sure that they're well. And sometimes that's not always pleasant for a family to hear. They might need to stay with us overnight. But we've got to do the best for the person, the deceased. That's who we're really trusted to care for 150%. Yeah. And our role is, it can be, some people find it quite scary or morbid. It's really not. It's a huge privilege for us as embalmers to care for someone, for a family, and present them back to a family as well. Like if they've been sick for a long time, just giving them that dignity back. And sometimes returning them to a stage that the family are happy to see them again. Because not everyone when you pass away is a pleasant experience. Sometimes it can be scary, it can be hard for families to watch and things like that. So it's just working with the family and working with the deceased to make sure that they're really well cared for. And sometimes that can take time.
That's beautiful.
And on the funeral directing side of it is I try to walk beside them for the journey. I don't want to tell them what they have to do. I want to guide them what they can do, but they ultimately have the end choice of what they want. You give them options, they can choose. And some of them have very definite ideas of what they want, but we make the bookings for them. We do the paperwork for them. We do the death registration and, death certificates and things like that for them. All the little things that when your brain is in a state of sometimes shock and severe grief, your brain doesn't want to have to function to look after that. So we do that for them on their behalf. But keep them in contact with them all the time as well, making sure they're okay, if they've got any questions, if they want to change anything, and always making sure that they know how much things are going to cost for them and asking them financially. And that can be a tricky thing, asking them financially, is there anything we need to look after for you? Is there a budget we need to be mindful of you? Can we help you organise something within that budget so you're not having a cost at the end of it that's unrealistic for you to manage? We don't want to incur a huge cost for them. We want them to have something that's special, intimate, personal, but doesn't have to be really expensive for them. And there's ways you can do that. It's just sitting down and talking with them, reading their family, what they think they might have to do to what they actually can do as well. So it's just really guiding them and just being there to support them and being there to ask questions from them and listen to them and make sure that they're getting what they possibly need for that time.
And I think that's beautiful, because you've walked the walk, I've walked the walk where we've lost loved ones, and you become quite numb, don't you? And it's almost, I can remember the experience, and you did help us, and I'm very grateful for that. And you sort of almost, if I describe it in such a way, you almost took our hand, held it gently, and guided us. And it was beautiful that you did that, because we were so numb and didn't know what to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was, it was, and because I'd met your loved one at a previous funeral as well. So that was kind of nice for me, because I had a small bond with you guys as well. And so I could banter with you about, your loved one when they passed, and from previous experience of like the banter he used to give me. And that can make it quite nice as well. And I'm not saying that it's lovely when you see families again and again, but it is really lovely when you've got that bond with them, that they trust you as well. And they know that it's not going to be a stock standard funeral, the same as auntie, uncle, dad, mum or brother. So that's kind of nice as well. And they know that you will just guide them to do what's right for them, not me, because it's not about the funeral direct.
No, you're right. And just leading on to that with the funerals, are you seeing more of a change these days from what we perhaps say is traditional? Like, what sort of changes are you seeing there?
Tradition has sort of stayed. It's just the flashiness of it that has changed, I think. COVID did change a lot for families, and they realised that you don't have to have the great big, what you feel the congregation acts from you. They realised that it doesn't matter how much you love someone, the showiness of it isn't actually what is proof of your love for them. It's what you do within the service that you have for them, whether it's at home, in a small chapel, in a marae, in a very small intimate gathering, whether it's just family and friends or immediate family or invited people only. People are having what they need and what they can cope with as well. So I think that's really important, that they can cope with it, because some people can't cope meeting and greeting lots of people. They don't want to have it in the paper. They want to have their private family time so they can adjust and move forward little steps without having to think they've got to be there for everyone else. So it has changed in the fact that some funerals aren't as large as what people expect them to be anymore. It's a lot more about the important people for them that they find they need to have around them, not everyone that knew mum from 50 years ago so it has changed a little bit, but also a lot more meaningful, I think, now. It's a lot more about the person, about the family, than what they think everyone else means.
Yeah, that's really right. True. You're so right. And I know I'm certainly seeing a lot more where people quite often, if you do read death notices, they quite often it's saying now that the funeral's already been held in accordance to their wishes, which is lovely.
No, like everything has changed. Food has gone up. So if you're having a funeral for 100 people and it's $15 to $20 a head, that's a lot of income for family to spend on a token of appreciation to people. So a lot of them are doing like they'll have their service, but then they might have a gathering later on and invite everyone along and have it that way. So people are still doing it, but just slightly different. And because the cost is huge for some.
Oh yes, and especially with you saying, $15 to $20 a head, just what flashed into my mind isn't the minimum wage about $23 or $24. So
exactly.
Goodness me, you're working an hour to pay for one person to attend your funeral.
Yeah. So it's just about quality versus quantity to what is appropriate for the family.
That's beautiful.
And
so
then
now you
understand they don't.
Sorry.
So you just need them to understand that it's actually not about everyone else. It's just about, they just need to look after them and what they need. And then they can worry about everyone else afterwards and do something separately. Everyone can bring a plate and, a BYO and have a gathering that way.
Yeah. And that's I think the big key takeaway. It's got to be what's important to them. Okay, so you also hold a national diploma in embalming with WellTech. So could you tell us about your educational background and how that's perhaps prepared you for your current role?
Well, originally I'm a registered nurse by trade. So I started nursing when I was 14, working at Barrett Street Hospital just on a 1 day a week in an afternoon. And then when I was about 14, my parents wouldn't let me, I'd gone to my brown auntie's funeral. So I was quite intrigued with that and wanted to become a funeral director then, and my parents wouldn't let me. So I actually went down the family route of being a nurse like my aunties, great aunties, and great great auntie. So I went nursing for 30 years, I suppose. Specialised in dementia care, aged care as well, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And then there was an opportunity to become a funeral director. So to go to the embalming course, to do the funeral education, you had to be within a funeral home and you had to be in a minimum of 2 years. So I was in my workplace and then I had the opportunity to go, which I was really grateful for. So I would go to Wellington to train. So we went for 2 8-week blocks in Wellington. So you go down there. Everyone could tell who the embalming students were because on a Tuesday and Thursday you turn up in your suits. The rest of the days you're in civvies. So Tuesday and Thursday we'd have clinical placements. So we would turn up in our suits with our little bags with all our mortuary gear in it. And you'd go to tech and then go out to various places. So we did that. And then you have to sit in a practical exam at the end of that. So you go through, so we went through a lot of medical background, medical conditions, the chemicals that we use. We have to do a chemical safety, a vehicle safety, certificate, things like that. So it was quite involved and you have to, and I suppose that's where I was lucky with a medical background because I could look at a medical condition and go, okay, so then I've got those problems behind that of like the renal failures, the toxins that build up in our bodies with different medical conditions. So I found that a bonus for me that I could use it because I was like 41 when I went back as an adult student. So trying to get the brain back and re-engage was quite interesting at the time. So we made little flip cards and there was Kirsten and I would go walking around the foreshore asking questions with the answers on the back, doing, getting ready for exams and because you had exams all the way through it. So, and there's very few of us in the country, like we're very minimal. Embalmers are not a highly numbered of qualified members in the country. So maybe 300 of us actually qualified embalmers in the country. Yeah. So it was actually really good. So having a medical background, going down to WellTech and sitting exams and doing the embalming course was a huge learning curve for me and very valuable in my care of families going forward as well. So knowing how the body worked, how to prepare them to go home for certain circumstances, but also how to reconstruct somebody after a really bad accident or disfigurements as well. So it teaches you how to return and restore someone's presence and for viewing and things like that. So it was well worth the time away. It was really, really valuable. You got to meet other members from around the country as well, and you still build bonds with them. And I still catch up with them every now and again as well and keep in touch. And have we, I haven't done this for a while. Can you just tell me, am I on the right track again? Or things like that as well. So it's really nice to bounce off ideas of other embalmers. So it's good because like we had 11 in our class. So it was actually nice to be able to talk to them and go through things with them and ask them questions and they'll ask you questions. And we all have different techniques of how we do things and achieve things as well. So it's been really, really valuable to do. Yeah.
Actually, something you've just spoken about that I'd never even considered, and that was perhaps people's medical conditions and how that could interact with the drugs you use. Yeah, it's
It
amazing.
does. So we use arterial solutions, we use water correctors and things like that. So depending on what the person's have, we use specific chemicals to treat those conditions or the state of their body when they pass as well. And like I know everyone's got this fallacy that formaldehyde's really bad for us and everything like that. We use such a low percentage. There's actually more in your dining room table than what we have in an embalming. And once it's actually someone's embalmed with it, the formaldehyde dissipates anyway, so it doesn't become a huge issue anymore because it's really not, it changes once it mixes with the body's proteins. So yeah, so it alters it for us as well, but it gives the family a chance to say goodbye.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. In a safe environment.
Yeah.
That's
Because
amazing.
natural processes start. Our bodies start breaking down the minute that we pass away. So, it's to keep them safe, that loved ones can spend time with, hold them, kiss them, take them home, take them away, take them overseas even. Like we repatriate quite a few from New Zealand overseas. So you make sure they're okay for that. And
yeah. And sometimes there are circumstances where, from a public's perspective, I've certainly heard where people, something might have happened and the body hasn't yet been released from, it might have had police involvement or something, and they have the body for a certain amount of time and they're not allowed to release it.
What people don't realise about that, sadly, is that the coroner is actually the deceased person's best friend. They are solely there to make sure the deceased story is told. So I know culturally, and sometimes it can be really hard to understand that the coroner won't release them, but they need to make sure they've got all their information correct to release them, because once they're released, they've got no jurisdiction over them. So it means that if someone dies unexpectedly at home, they haven't seen a GP for 2 or 3 years, and that's quite common these days. They need to make sure they've got the information right for that, because there might be a family history that no one knows about. There might be a heart condition, there might be, things like that. So they are really the deceased storyteller. They're there to make the story for their whakapapa going forward, for, generations going forward. They're the ones that make catch genetic disposition that no one knew about until they start going back through the family history. So the coroner is actually someone's best friend. They just, because I think it's under the police are only a contract to the coroner. The coroner is an independent member of the Justice Department, and they don't care how who's involved in the death. They just want to make sure how they've died is correct and that it's documented correctly. And sometimes for like sudden deaths, you might never ever get a result of why they've passed either, because sometimes it's just unexplainable. So people don't really realise the coroner is actually the deceased. They're guarding them. They're their guardian. They are there to protect them and to make sure their story is gathered and told correctly, so the information going forward is as well. So the coroner is actually the deceased best friend. It just doesn't seem like it at the time.
Well, I don't know. Is that the way it's portrayed to us in the media sometimes, especially if it's a high-profile situation?
I think sometimes it is. They just sometimes the families, because they're in such a mode of grief as well, they don't sometimes really comprehend what they've been told about it, or they've heard little snippets of it. But when you take the snippets together, it's slightly misjudged information or misconstrued information as well. And they just, emotions are high, tensions are high. And if it's a suicide or a traumatic death at home or a car accident, things like that, they're just not 100% sure. They think the police are responsible, but it's sort of not. Yeah, so it's just a little bit of guidance, and that's where the funeral director comes in, because they can sit with the families and explain that to them as well. So quite often what we'll do, if we've got someone that has been traumatic, the first meeting with them is really just to go and sit and listen to them, not actually do anything. Just go and show them your face so they know who they're talking to on the phone, and give them time to get and ask any questions. And then after that, it's like, how about we just look after this portion of, getting your loved one released from the coroner. Then we'll look at the next step, or we'll do whatever you're comfortable with. So it's just a guidance. And like you said, hold your hand and just guide them through the times that they don't fully understand, or is a bit more challenging cultural wise for them than what they were used to. Especially like our families now, we have maybe a day or 2 day extra turnaround for the coroner, because they don't do postmortems at base hospital anymore. Haven't done now for nearly 5 years. So our loved ones go to Waikato. So that's a whole day up, a whole day back. So that takes away, like we would, it changes that time frame that we get to have them in our care, so we can care for them to get them back to family as well. So it can be another 2 days or 3 days, and depending whether it's maybe a homicide, that can be longer as well. So we you have to hold their hand and guide them through those times, and just sit and answer questions and just let them know that actually it's not a bad thing. I know that you're anxious to get them home, but it's just trying to reassure them that it's okay, which can be hard sometimes.
Oh, yeah. So that you've just given me another thought. You were saying there, like, obviously it may take an extra 2 or 3 days with the coroner, but also you said that obviously naturally, as soon as anything's passed, it starts decomposing straight away. So at what point, if someone is with a coroner, are you, as a funeral or an embalmer, are you able to go in and obviously start sort of preserving that body a bit so that later on the family can have their loved one back?
We are fortunate that we have cooling systems at the hospital and in Waikato where they go to. So the coolness actually helps the person that's died. So it keeps your body at a nice low temperature so that the organisms don't react quite as fast and progress as much. But once we have them, we can treat that and we can do the best that we can for that person as well. So it really just depends on how they've died. The length, how long they've been deceased as well can be a huge factor for a family as well. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes it is a case of they just are not viewable. If they've had a really bad, if they've been, in an area that they haven't been found for like 4 or 5 weeks or, things like that. Sometimes it's just not achievable to give them back 100, that 150% that we would like to. But that's a very big call for us to make as funeral directors or embalmers. So we would never say that to anyone unless we really could not achieve anything for them.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, that it would be absolute extenuating circumstances that you would say that to a family. Yeah. And what a big call, yeah, yes. on your shoulders as well. Wow.
And that's when we have a discussion, our whole team would have a discussion about that. Sometimes we're lucky that the embalmer, the funeral director, and that is the same person that's caring for that whole family. So sometimes that can be a complete, you have that whole ground bit of knowledge for that family and what their expectations are and things like that. It can be a little bit more tricky if the embalming has been taken place by someone else and you've got a separate funeral director and think, or they're actually going away out of the region as well. So it's just a matter of trying to sort of gently ask the family what their expectations are, gently ask what the police have told them, listening to what they're saying between the questions when they're talking amongst each other, because sometimes they don't want to tell you, so you sort of got to listen to them just to sort of see if you've got it on the right gauge with them. Yeah, it's a very big call. It's not usually one you make by yourself. Normally it's a team discussion, because someone else might have some skills that you can use that can help, and someone else might have their skills that can help. So collectively you can create an outcome that's really good. Sometimes we just can't, and that's the hardest part. Yeah.
Well, Janine, this has been absolutely fascinating. I've been loving this, and I see that we're actually just about out of time, so we might have to get you back another day and ask some more questions.
Let me know.
Yeah, thank you. So is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we finish up?
Just don't be afraid to be honest with your funeral director. Don't put yourself in a position that is going to scare you. Just be as relaxed as what you can under the circumstances, and just ask questions and be gentle on yourself as you. Just be gentle on yourself during the journey, because it can be difficult.
And if people want to reach out to you after listening to you on here, are they able to?
Yes, they can. They can either contact me through you or find me on Facebook. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'll put your link in the show notes. So, hey, thanks, Janine, for your time. That's been absolutely so insightful. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned so much.
No, you're welcome. You take care, Cara. All right.
You too.